everybody, welcome to the build video for the BAT, the Backyard Airplane Trainer. I think this is going to be great. We're going to have a fun time, and please bear with me because this is the first build video I have ever made, so kind of don't know what I'm doing, but we're going to have fun, and I think we're gonna get this done. So, all right, first thing is we need to have the plans. You can go to my website, adamterry.net, and look under the build plans category, and you will find a post about the BAT, building the BAT, and there will be a PDF document with all of the plans in there. And then get those, print them out, and when you print them out, they should print out as actual size, but we'll just want to check and make sure. The way that I have for almost all of these, there are 7 pages except for the one, the diagram for the wing. This is obviously not actual size, but all the rest of these are actual size. They should be actual size, where 1 square, it comes in a little faint, but 1 square is going to be equal to 1/4 of an inch. So you can see that squares there. All right, so first step, we've got all our pages printed out. We're going to start on the fuselage halves. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our razor blade. Remember, always be careful, don't cut yourself. That's very important. And then what we're going to do is right here on this first page, okay? So what we need to do, just the way that the plans turned out, we're going to cut right along this line, this end of the line right here where it says connect to page 2. We're going to put our ruler right along this line right there. We're going to be, as exact as possible, but it doesn't, it doesn't have to be crazy. You don't have to, don't get too crazy, all right? So there we go. So we've got, so this little arrow goes right up to the edge of the paper. Awesome. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set it on top of page 2 like this, and we're going to line up the so that this top line of our fuselage is straight across, okay, and when it meets up on both the top here and the bottom, and these little arrows should pretty much touch. And again, down here, these 2 little lines are going to touch together, and then we're just going to take a little bit of tape, and we're just going to tape these 2 pieces of paper together, just like that. Just like that, so that it stays. I'm going to flip it over, tape the other side, so everything stays just like how we want it to. Okay. So once you do this, this is cool because now this is actually the full size fuselage. This is the actual size that the fuselage is going to be. Okay. So the first step in this whole process is going to be cutting out all of these pieces, and then we'll work on gluing them together and all that stuff. So let's cut out the fuselage first. So we're going to, once we have this all taped together and it's all good, and we can see right here that it is pretty much a straight line right across the top of the fuselage. Now we're going to get our foam board. I'm using black foam board. You could use white foam board, but I think black is cooler. Kind of goes with that whole, BAT thing. And I'm going to get this centered up in here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of put this, towards a corner here. Let me get this so you can see it better. Towards a corner. I wouldn't even, don't bother trying to line up this edge with the edge of the foam board, because I think that's just more trouble than it's worth. So what we are going to do is we're going to put this in place, and you can tape this down if you want, if you so desire, or you can just hold it down with your hand. And what we're going to do is at each corner, you'll see probably there's a little circle at basically at each corner of the fuselage drawing. And we're going to use a thumb tack or just some pointy thing or whatever, and we're going to poke holes at each, basically at each angle in the fuselage. This way we will be able to, well, you don't really need one right there, but this way we will be able to use our ruler and cut out pretty much exactly the exact shape that we want. Okay, so we're gonna cut it and put it here. Now, you could just do that. What I'm gonna do is to make it a little bit easier later on when we are, let me move this again, sorry, when we are putting our inner braces in. So I'm gonna say at the top corner of each little brace area, these little shaded, they're kind of hard to see, but the little shaded rectangles that I have in here, those are going to tell us where the inner braces go. And I'm going to make marks, just little, very, very small marks of where they should go. So that way, it should be a little bit easier when we are gluing everything. That one I don't really need up there because I know it's going to be at the top. But like these pieces, let's see right there. Well, that one's really, it's just actually, you know what? It's actually just this inner piece right here. At these four corners, I'm just going to punch little holes right there, and that's pretty much all you need for that. Okay, now that we have the holes punched out, it might be kind of hard to see. Let me bring this up closer so you can see we've got little marks. And what we're going to do is what you can either do is you can either draw this. Oh, this big sheet of foam board is a little tricky to work with. What you can do is you can either put your ruler out and go from the farthest forward mark to the back mark. Let me get this longer ruler, and you can draw a line, which I think is kind of easier. It helps you visualize it, or in case you cut through the little mark that you punched, it's easier to see what is going on here. So at least for this first one, we're going to draw this line. We're going to draw lines from each little mark that we have made. Here's what we're going to do. To make this easier to work with, instead of working with this big old sheet of foam board, I'm just actually going to cut a very rough size just to get this thing out of this giant chunk of foam board. Okay. Alright, cool. So just like that. So now we're just working with this smaller piece. That'll probably help you keep things from getting out of hand. Okay, so cool. Now we're going to cut along all of the lines that we've made. Ta-da! Okay, now we have our one side of our fuselage all cut out, and we're going to do the same exact thing again so that we have two of these. So let's do that, and then we'll cut to... Alright, moving on to page 3. Here we have our wing end caps. We're going to cut out two of these. And then we have our outer plates. I call them plates. So we have our wing stop, our nose plate, the top one, and then our belly plate. And those are going to go on the outermost part of the airplane, and that's why they're a little bit wider here. We also have our motor pod, and we're going to cut all these out now. I'm going to take this, and we're just going to start, and we're just going to round, kind of round the edges. We don't need to do those straight angled cuts. We're just going to go in that general shape, kind of come around the front here. Don't worry about it being perfect. Okay, and if you really mess something up, you can just do it again. And even if you really mess something up, it's probably still going to fly just fine. Alright, there you go. There are our end caps. Alright, now we're going to cut out our motor pod, and I just have this little scrap piece of foam board that we can use here. Kind of save some foam board. Try and make the best use of it as possible. And again, we're going to do the same thing right here. You can tape it down if you want. I'm just going to hold it down. We're going to punch little holes right at the corners, or at the little, where the little dots are, the little intersections of the lines. there we go. So now we have our little motor pod pieces cut out. Just be sure to, I don't know, stack those together and keep them kind of together so you know what they're for. And let's move on. All right, now we're going to cut out the inner braces. These are going to be on the inside of the airplane, and you'll notice that I put a little number in the corner of each one of these, and that's just to kind of help you kind of figure out where to place them on the actual on the side of the fuselage when we're ready to do that. So I've got little. It's a little faint. It's kind of hard to see, but these little shaded areas, I've got the numbers that correspond there, just to kind of help keep things straight. So this way, once we've cut them out, instead of having to write down all of what they are, we can just put the number, and it'll make it a little bit easier. So let's get to it. All right, and because there are so many little dots here, and we got so many little intersections, it's going to be kind of hard to tell what to cut where. So I'm just going to make little tiny pinpricks along the foam, along these inner kind of intersections, just to get an idea of where to put the lines, because when there are so many, it's tricky. All right, cool. So we can see what we want, what we don't want. This we don't need. We don't need any of this. That's just going to be extra pieces that we cut. So looking back here at our piece of paper here, so we can see which, how they match up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up the numbers here on the pieces that we've cut here. So here we have number 2. Here we have number 7. We have number 1, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 8, and number 3 on here, just like that. So now it's going to be a little bit easier to tell what's what and what goes where. Cool. So we'll just keep on cutting. Okay, there we go. So now we have all of our inner pieces here, and we can set these aside and move on to the next one. All right, rudder and stabilizer. Well, rudder and vertical stabilizer. So we're going to cut this all out like normal, and then once we get to this part, we're going to score it. We're not going to cut all the way through, and then we're going to make our relief cut so that it can move around. If you've never done that before, we're going to go through that. It's really not too hard. There we go. Now we need to, so from this dot right here, from this slightly, it's not the outer one, but the one behind the outer one, we're going to make a mark, and we're going to make a dashed mark. Okay? We're going to make a dashed line mark right there. And that's going to tell us that we don't want to actually cut all the way through. Not yet, anyway. Now, right here, along this dashed line, we don't want to cut all the way through. We want to cut, we're gonna, what you can do is you can close your knife until there's about like one blade showing, if you use this kind of knife. Whoop. Let it focus, come on buddy. So that until there's about one blade, one little section of the blade showing, and then you can put it on your ruler and slide it along there, and you don't want to cut all the way through. We're just gonna cut about halfway through the foam board. And if you want to practice a little bit before you do it on this piece, go right ahead. So we're just going to make a little cut, and then what we can do is just gently bend it until it cracks open like that. Okay, so you can see that. I think it's like blowing out the camera here or something. There you go. Okay, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this on the edge of the table. Well, I'll show you right here. But what you can do is you can set it on the edge of the table, and it will make this process a little bit easier, maybe a little bit safer. But what we're basically going to do, all right, so we're going to take the edge of this. So we have it like this. We're going to fold it back. For demonstrational purposes, I'm going to do it like this, just holding it. And what we want to do is make a cut along the edge here, and it's going to be angled. And it doesn't have to be, well, you want a pretty good angle to it. About a 45-degree angle or so. Okay? So it's going to look something like that. Okay? And you can just, I'm just going to cut the rest of this. This razor is a little dull. You really want to have a nice sharp razor when you do this. So then, what we'll do is we'll kind of bend it and see how far it bends. So it doesn't bend far enough. There's still some stuff in the way, still some foam in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make another cut here. Okay, so you want, that's probably decent. You want, I'm going to say at least 45 degrees of deflection. You can kind of see, if I put it up here against, put it like say against this line, you can kind of see that's about a little bit more than 45 degrees. I think that's probably pretty decent. And especially, yeah, I think that should be pretty good. But, you can always have more, you can have less, kind of depends. Also the servo is only going to move it so far. Now what we're going to do something that is a technique that I've been using recently, and I really like how it turns out. We're basically going to make a glued joint instead of just having paper holding the rudder on. So what we're going to do is we are going to just kind of eyeball about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of an inch on either side of the hinge. So we have the hinge right here, meaning the part where it's bending, and about maybe 1/4 inch or so. We're just going to very, very lightly cut away the paper. Just the paper. We don't want to cut the foam. We just want to cut the paper on both sides of the hinge, about 1/4 of an inch, or maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch, just like this. Okay, just very lightly, and then we want to peel up the paper that we just cut. If I can get a grip on it, there we go. Peel it back just like that. So now there's nothing holding these two pieces together. But what we're going to do, we're going to set them right here, just like this. Okay, and we're going to butt them up against each other, and we're going to press them not too hard, but just enough so that they're in contact with each other. And we're going to hold them like that. Now we're going to take our glue gun, and it's hot. We've got some glue, hot glue in there, and we're going to smear just a little, very small amount, just a little dab right along the inside. Right along the middle of the hinge, and then we're going to smear it with just a piece of scrap foam board, and that way it's gonna spread it out so it'll be nice and even. And we don't need a whole lot. We just need a very small amount. I'm going to do this one side. I'm going to do one side first because you want the glue to be nice and hot. So it's going to take a very small amount and just smear it across there. Just let it dry a little bit, and then I'll do it on this side. Then I'll do it over here, and because you want to make sure, if you do too long of a run, the glue might kind of start to harden by the time you actually get to smear it. So we'll just do a little bit. Really doesn't take a whole lot. It really doesn't. There we go. Just a little bit right there. I want to get some at the very top edge, right there, just like that. There we go. Doesn't take very much at all. Just blow on it a little bit, let it dry, and make sure you hold it flat so that it is on a flat surface. There we go. And then once it's nice and dry and all that, you'll have a nice hinge that is very, very strong, much stronger than how the paper would be holding this together. Because what would happen is the paper would bend, and then it starts to come off, and then your hinge doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and it's very, very annoying. So, yeah, so this will be great, and it's so strong like this that you'll actually be able to set the airplane on its tail and take off vertically. It's pretty fun, pretty neat. So, and we're going to do the same thing with the elevator. Basically, the same exact technique with the elevator. Let's get to it. Okay, same deal as before. We're going to cut out our elevator and horizontal stabilizer. Again, we have this dashed line right here, and we're going to just score along that line just like we did with the rudder, and then we're going to make a bevel cut and then make our glue joint just like we did with the rudder. Let's get to it. And I'm going to put a hole right here, which this is actually our center point for the elevator. And we're not actually going to cut anything, but this will just be so that we can line stuff up. Alright, so we're going to carefully, safely make our angled cut. And actually with the elevator, it's not as big of a deal. You don't need quite as much of an angle, because the angled part is going to be what determines how far you can basically have a nose down elevator control. And it doesn't take a whole lot to bring the nose. So we have our two pieces. Okay, we're gonna make sure there's no stuff on the table. We're gonna make sure they lay down flat. There's a little bit of paper right there, that's fine. Okay, we're gonna lay them down flat just like that. And so we got our little scrap for a scraper. We got our hot glue gun. It's nice and hot and gluey. And we're gonna just put a little bead, a very small bead, right there on that end. We're just gonna smear it while it's very hot. We want to make sure it's very hot when we smear it, so that way it's smeared smooth and clean. Alright, cool. So that settles it for the elevator. One more thing you can do, which might help a little bit later when we're actually putting all this stuff together. If you can see the little teeny little marks from the holes that I punched on the very center of the front and back of the elevator, we're going to line up our ruler, and this will kind of help us center up the elevator onto the actual tail of the airplane. And I'm just going to draw a line, and that's kind of going to be our center line, and that'll help us kind of figure out where it needs to go. Okay, cool. All right, and then we're all done. We have this beautiful glue joint. It's going to be very strong, and it's good to go. All right, let's keep moving on.